In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Tuesday, November 29th, and this is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Cotillo, and I have with me, as always, Mr. Sal Lito. What's up, Sal?
Whoa, I wasn't ready for me. I'm back at the top.
Yep, you're back on top. I think that introducing Steve first has been kind of bringing the show down.
Oh, definitely. I was going to say, it's just setting a terrible tone.
Yeah, he's so depressed lately about the fantasy football season in Falafel that I think he's just wearing down everyone.
Yeah, I'm over here. I'm dancing around. I'm excited.
You
I feel
sing,
good.
you dance. It's all happy.
Yeah.
All good things. All good things.
Second seed in falafel.
A lot of good,
good stuff.
A lot of good energy from you, Sal. So we're introducing you first tonight. You're Sal Lito. You can follow Sal on Twitter as @LitoSal. Is that right? Yeah, @LitoSal.
That's correct.
I am @Wally Central. The show is @Falafel House. And we do have with us Mr. Steve Marcus.
Yay!
I wish you guys could see my face right now. It's glaring angrily in what I would assume to be your general directions. So
nope, I'm over here.
Did you just
there
look east? Did you just look to the east?
I did.
Nice.
I did.
That's good. It's good.
Gotcha. I gotcha. I was going to wonder why you haven't introduced Sal first for, I don't know, going on 6 months now. So
6 months?
I always felt like Sal, Sal should be introduced before me.
Always?
Always. Why not?
Are you okay with me introducing myself first?
We were going to have a talk about that after the show, actually.
Oh, all right. That'll be the post-show meeting we'll all look forward to. So you can follow Steve on Twitter as @SidSkeet. By the way, you can follow us all in the Fantasy Life app in the Falafel House chat. We all have mostly the same names except for
Sal33.
Sal33. Check us out because it's a great place to hit us up for fantasy information or to just chat with us and get a little more inside knowledge about who we are.
Definitely come
intimate.
In, ask questions, and then argue with my answers.
Yeah, Sal, you've been a little bitter about that lately, huh?
No, I'm not bitter about it.
Not into the fantasy discussions?
I love the fantasy discussions. I just hate when I just give an answer and I give what I feel is actually good information to support that, and then somebody goes, "But what about Joe Smith?" I'm like, I don't want Joe Smith.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is.
But what about that matchup, huh? What about that matchup?
Joe Smith has a phenomenal matchup this week.
No, you can't deny that.
Yeah,
right.
Can't deny that.
Absolutely not. All right, so we got a sort of packed show today. I think it's a little light this episode, but should be still good. I'm sure we'll still somehow make it to an hour.
I'll make sure of it.
We're going to go through some news, which should be interesting. Not a ton going on, but there are some good stories to keep your eye on as the week progresses. We will go through some of those. We will let Sal play another game, which I think we all learned from the last one that this could go any way. There were complaints last time, so hopefully this one's better.
I told you to tell your family to stop listening.
That is true. So, and then I think that's about it. But maybe we'll surprise you with some stuff. So, I got to lead the show off, guys. We're going to talk about some news, but I can't go any further without talking about the biggest news of all, which is my boy Aaron Ripkowski finally gets the first touchdown.
Nice first touchdown for anybody running the ball in Green Bay this year, actually.
Yeah, it definitely was. Obviously not really big news. We've talked about Ripkowski quite a bit on this show in a joking manner because, he gets one or two carries here and there. But he did score the first rushing touchdown for the Green Bay Packers, so I thought that was pretty nice.
The guy looks good with the ball in his hands. He takes people on head on, and it's fun to watch. They need to give him the ball more.
He is a fun guy to watch. They should give him the ball more. It's not like Starks really got a whole lot done. So
Free Ripkowski.
free Ripkowski indeed. So on to some real news. What do you guys want to start with today? The RG3 news? Is this news? So Robert Griffin III is cleared to practice. Obviously, the Browns are not playing this week. They're on bye. The one of the two teams on bye week in week 13, which is awesome for
Convenient.
us fantasy players.
Yep.
Especially as Steve has pointed out multiple times, since there was no one on bye last week, which makes perfect sense.
Makes no sense at all. No sense, but whatever.
But
It's not like people are trying to make the playoffs or anything this week, NFL. You should care about that.
Well, you're not, though.
Well, not in FLAFFL.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Let's move on. Thank you.
In any case, RG3 has been cleared to practice, cleared for full contact, in fact. So you got to figure, they may ease him in a little bit here, but it's going to be, Cody Kessler's also resuming practice from his concussion. We all talked, we talked about Kessler. It was his second concussion in, I think, as many weeks. So not a good sign there. You don't know what's going to happen. I was concerned they might shut him down for the year, but it sounds like he's going to practice as well. It's kind of a three-way competition here. Do either of you guys for one, care? And for another, who wins out? Is it RG3's job to lose?
I personally think it'll be RG3 when they come out of the bye week. I only don't care because I don't own a Cleveland Brown in any league that I play in anywhere, not one. So it does. I did actually draft RG3, if you guys remember, way back in the Scott Fish Bowl, which that didn't work out well for me because he got hurt after week 1.
And because all three of us were eliminated.
Yeah, so that was the only Brown. I'm trying to brush right over that there. That's the only Brown I actually owned this year. So I think it is good for Pryor and for Coleman and maybe even Barnage. So I think anybody who does own those guys would be happy if he gets the job back, especially for the downfield throws.
Yep, I don't have too much else to add to that. It's an upgrade, you would think, for those position players. I do agree that RG3 will be back, but I am with Sal. I don't own too many Browns. I own Terrell Pryor in a dynasty league, but I'm not relying on the Browns heading into the playoffs. And so, I mean, if you have to and you're in a deeper league, you're still going to be rolling the guys like Terrell Pryor out there, but I don't think it's too much of a difference between the other guys that have been there so far this season.
As a Corey Coleman owner in a 16-team league, which you are both a part of, I am hopeful that it does help him out. I think RG3 can chuck the ball pretty well, so hopefully it does help those guys a little bit at least. Just a little bit. I'm not really asking for a ton, just a little. But, I think I agree with you both. I think it's RG3's job to lose. I think they'll probably give him a shot the rest of the way anyway, just to see what they have. Moving along, Brandon Cooks did a little complaining, or at least sources have complained about his role. We talked about it and joked about it a little bit. Sal, do I need to apologize for my comments about Peyton's wife?
Well, as it turns out, Sean Payton got divorced
Right.
a few years back, and he's actually dating a former Miss West Virginia now. So I don't know if that's
maybe that's
before or
wow.
after the divorce.
We're breaking all kinds of new news now.
I don't know if there's any truth to the rumor that his ex-wife was the one who let Sean know that Brandon was upset. There's all kinds of things swirling around. She may have been the source, from what I understand. So, but Brandon Cooks was not upset. Was not happy at all. He's very upset.
He's very upset. 0 targets in a game that they threw all over the place. Scored 49 points. But you got to figure. Michael Thomas and Willie Snead have both looked really good. They're gonna use the tight end Fleener in that offense, even though he hasn't been great for fantasy purposes. And I just, overall, there's a lot of mouths to feed, so that's gonna happen. I think that's kind of how they explained it as well. It is what it is. It's these things happen. But for me, I look at this news as the squeaky wheel tends to get the grease. So. If Brandon Cooks is leaking out through sources that he's unhappy with his role, there's a good chance someone finds him next week.
Is it going to be Drew Brees?
I would think so.
Could be Willie Snead.
I mean, it could be Willie Snead though.
That's true.
So
Very true.
Why would you assume?
That's why I asked. I'm coming to you for some advice here.
I appreciate that. Any further thoughts on Brandon Cooks?
He's a great wide receiver. I think it's also something to keep in mind, though, that, Kev, you've been typically lower on Brandon Cooks throughout the season than me and Sal have.
Yep.
And this is kind of the reason why, is because there are so many mouths to feed. He does have the tendency to have these games where he doesn't have as many targets, he doesn't have as many receptions, but because of his big playability, sometimes he doesn't need the volume. Sometimes he can have those 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, and that's all he needs. But you're someone that has always had this in mind. And so when you see something like this, yeah, it sucks and it's a bad week for it to happen, but you have to understand that this type of thing does happen and can happen to him in this offense. Yeah,
I completely agree. And when you're talking about roster construction, that's exactly the type of thing you want to keep in mind, right? So we talked about it a little bit with one of, I forget now who we were talking about, but when you have guys that do this, you have to balance them with some safe guys. So if you have a guy that's a boom or bust candidate, like a Cooks, or Deshaun Jackson was historically the guy, you have to balance it with some safe guys that you know are going to get steady points, like an Edelman. So,
oh, shocker, Patriot.
Hey, that's not my fault. Steve brought him up before the show.
That's true. He had Edelman on the brain.
That's right.
I should have never mentioned his name. Damn it.
All right. So Adrian Peterson was doing some sprinting in Tuesday's practice. I guess he's running sprints. They're saying he's probably ahead of schedule. They're still saying that week 15 is probably the best case scenario for Adrian Peterson. So I'm not sure how much he's on the fantasy radar here, but if you're a team that held on to Adrian Peterson and you got some, high playoff expectations, your second and third week in the playoffs might look pretty damn good.
Is he a guy that you would trust just rolling right out there first week that he's active? You're going to put him in your lineup?
I think if you've held on to him all year, it really depends on what you lucked into to replace him, right? I mean, there's a solid chance you have a guy like a Jordan Howard or something like that you may not, because you took a chance on a guy later in the draft and it panned out. But there's also the chance that some of your later shots didn't pan out, and he's going to be just as good as anything you might have in your lineup. What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
I have no thoughts on him.
None? No thoughts on Adrian Peterson?
No, I wouldn't be able to start him when he came back.
You don't think so?
I wouldn't be able to. I just wouldn't. I feel that if you're still playing in a meaningful game in week 15, you have pieces that you trust and would have more confidence in to put in your lineup. I wouldn't be able to do it. Luckily, I don't have that concern this year. I don't have him anywhere. But I would feel very, very uneasy sticking him in my lineup first week back.
What if you're a team that's very wide receiver heavy and you're running out?
Hairy wide receivers. I bet you every time.
What if you're running out Terrence West as your RB2 on a weekly basis? I mean, you're not going to start him over Terrence West. It's Adrian Peterson. I know he's coming back off an injury. I know their rushing attack has been abysmal this year, but it's still Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, I'm in that scenario, I would absolutely start him over Terrence West. But I don't know if you're playing in a meaningful game, rolling Terrence West out as your RB2 going into the playoffs and getting into that week. So
if you have OBJ and Julio Jones as your 2 wide receivers, you might.
It's definitely very possible in a 16-plus team league like we play.
16, definitely.
It's definitely possible because, on a weekly basis, you might have, like you're saying, Kevin, I happen to be very wide receiver heavy in FLAFFL, and I'm at second place, and Ryan is running back heavy, and he's in first place. And those positions have tended to carry us both this year, and we've kind of mixed and matched any other position. So it's possible that you could get to that spot, and Peterson coming back, depending on where you're at and who you have, absolutely, he's worth a look.
That's all I'm saying, Steve. He's worth a look.
Right, he's worth a look. I get it. I'm so scared. I scare easily.
Yeah, you do scare easily. So we have definitely learned that.
You're scary, and his wide receivers are hairy. You guys, what the hell's going on with the both of you tonight?
Well, here you go, Sal. This is one you are excited for. Stefon Diggs has returned to practice on Tuesday. What do you think about that?
Woo! Oh, Was I supposed to be excited about that?
No, I don't know. I mean, you seem to like Stefan Diggs. You're a big Diggs guy.
Yeah, I think Stefan Diggs is a solid, when healthy, is a solid wide receiver too in PPR because the targets have become so tremendous over those last few weeks before he got the injury. Again, another guy I don't personally own anywhere just because I wasn't able to get my hands on him. And I do have Adam Thielen in some places, so I wouldn't mind if he missed another week. But if he comes back, they're playing on a Thursday night against Dallas. If they come back, I'd have to look at what my matchups are to decide if I'm putting him in there, what my other guys are doing. But short week, he is practicing in full, as I believe. So there's a pretty good shot he's back out there on Thursday.
Yeah, I think he'll probably play. I to your point about Thielen, though, I have him obviously in FLAFFL, and I'm still going to start him because I think that even if Diggs plays with the short week and only having a couple of days of practice, I think he's probably going to be limited a little bit. So I will probably still roll Thielen out there and hope that he gets one more week of good production. But I can see your point as to why you might not. Here is one that you are definitely excited about, Sal. Ladarius Green looks like he's going to see some increased reps going forward. Tomlin says each week he's showing more detail, more game readiness. He was, he got 67 yards on 2 catches in the last game. His production's ticking up there. And we all know that you would just love to use him in a successful manner in FLAFFL.
Yeah, absolutely. He did have those 2 nice receptions, and if that's a look at things to come, I'm going to be very excited because I recently traded for Travis Kelce because of my tight end woes, and had Kelce in there last week for the first time. It got me a 14-point game, which is something I didn't even know existed as a tight end owner in FLAFFL. So if Green come back and get healthy and start putting up somewhere in the neighborhood to 8 to 10 points a game, for a flex position in a 16-team league, that's really something I'm looking forward to. I'll happily put him in and play 2 tight ends each week because, you don't have a lot of there's a dearth of talent in a 16-team league when you get down to your flex position. So very, very excited about that. And just based on the limited amount of touches and receptions he's gotten, he's looked good, like he has big playability. So you guys might know what you're talking about after all.
Sal, you and Kev may potentially have a playoff round 1 matchup in FLAFFL. How happy would you be if Ladarius Green were in your lineup and able to be very productive to earn you a win in that matchup, knowing how much Kev and I had talked about him this preseason?
The only thing that could probably make it better would be, and I don't even know what the schedule is for week 14 yet, like how everything lines up, would be like if Pittsburgh played on Monday night and he caught a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and I won by 1. That would be, that would be tremaendous.
It would be even better if there was a stat correction the next day.
So I win by 2.
And you lost.
Win by 2. It's like you're crazy.
Oh, man. Yeah, though, I mean, the irony there would be overwhelming for many of us. So, all right, Tyrell Williams has a shoulder injury. It's apparently a labrum issue. Steve, he's not according to San Diego, he's not expected to miss any time, but others don't seem to be so sure. Seems like he's had this issue before. I think, your biggest concern when you're talking about shoulder issues and things like that is can he reach, can he stretch, and how much pain is he going to be in, and further, what happens if he falls on the shoulder again? So what are your thoughts on Tyrell Williams, even if he does play?
Yeah, I would definitely be pretty hesitant to put him in my lineup this week. The matchup isn't bad. They're going up against Tampa Bay, although you saw how dominant they were against the Seahawks last week, so they could be a little scary.
That's just because you start Russell Wilson.
No, that was a joke. That was a joke. Don't be scared of the Tampa Bay defense. But, you have to be worried a little bit about the amount of options that Phillip Rivers has. You got the 2 tight ends, you got Dontrell Inman, Travis Benjamin, Melvin Gordon, all those kinds of guys. So if Tyrell Williams is dealing with a shoulder injury, I'm definitely going to be looking for other options. A guy that's been talked about a lot lately is Taylor Gabriel. So he might be somebody you might be able to pick up and put into your flex if you need that type of high upside player in there. But I would definitely keep track of him throughout the week. And if you can find a better option, I definitely would try to get one in there.
I tend to agree with you there. I've been hesitant on Tyrell Williams to begin with. I was concerned when Travis Benjamin came back, he was going to have a reduced workload, and I still think that San Diego is kind of a crapshoot, but he has looked really solid. But with this injury, I think you have to be very cautious. So my other question to you, Steve, is this: did Eli Manning call you to apologize as well, or did he just apologize to Sterling Shepard? I feel like the two of you go hand in hand, so I don't know if he, called you to apologize.
Well, actually, this is weird. What had happened was that after the game, Sterling Shepard called me, expressing his frustration over what had happened, over not getting any of the targets. He did have the nice rush, and so I took it upon myself to get a hold of Eli, let him know that Sterling Shepard was not very happy with what had happened on Sunday. He said he'd take care of it, and bada bing, bada boom. Here we go. Eli Manning apologizing to Sterling Shepard, because that's what good quarterbacks do to their talent, right? Drew Brees, you apologize for giving them 0 targets. So, yes,
right,
he
Drew
said
Brees.
That's right. And he said he was going to make up for it, and that you can look for him to have a pretty decent game on Sunday. They were playing Pittsburgh, so that should be a high-scoring game. Obviously, you can't just be like, oh, well, that's what they said, so I'm going to put him in my lineup. But you think that he's probably not going to have a goose egg again this weekend. So, just like with Brandon Cooks, these types of things happen. You understand the volume's there. It's an outlier. It's probably not going to be happening again anytime soon.
I mean, he had 6 targets at least 6 targets in the previous 9 games before that. So you got to think that there's going to be a little bit of a bounce back here. And as I mentioned, and to your point, the squeaky wheel tends to get the grease. So, John Brown, this is one that I can't tell anymore if it's injuries with these guys or if Carson Palmer's just terrible or if the offense is just a mess. So I don't know. I think the only guy you want in Arizona right now is Larry Fitzgerald and obviously David Johnson. But I guess Carson Palmer's been serviceable as a quarterback. But John Brown's still dealing with some leg problems related to a sickle cell trait. This sounds like something that's not really going to go away during the season, at least in my opinion. So I'm not a doctor, and I certainly don't pretend to be one, but it sounds like an issue that might linger. I would be cautious using him. He's has not been productive, and I think his status for this week will be in doubt. Keep an eye on it if you are forced to be using him. So definitely a scary thing there. I feel bad for the guy, but from a fantasy perspective, definitely keep your eye on it, monitor it, and if you can make other arrangements for a wide receiver, I would do so. And
yep, I definitely agree there. No other wide receiver other than Larry Fitzgerald am I trusting to put in my lineup each week from Arizona. Not anymore. Such a difference from last year. It's so crazy.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, they were so good last year, and now just nothing. So even Larry Fitzgerald with the low numbers last week hurt me. Not quite enough hurt me.
Yeah, how much did it hurt you? Like, did you lose your game? Like, did it hurt you that much where you actually ended up losing, or did you still win?
I still
just curious.
I still pulled out the victory in both.
So it did not hurt you in any way, actually.
In both leagues that I have him, actually. So yeah, I guess you're right. It didn't hurt me at all.
Okay, so it did not hurt you. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Good. Thank you. I'm a liar. All right. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones says that there is no plans to reduce the workload of Ezekiel Elliott, Sal. I'm shocked at this, actually, only because I think that with the record that they have currently, not sitting at 9-1, you gotta wonder if when they start to clinch things, and with the way the rest of the NFC has been playing, aside from the Giants, I think. You got to wonder if they're going to start resting guys all around, let alone just Ezekiel Elliott.
So this goes back to something we discussed even with Dez when we had Dave on Trade Fantasy about the Cowboys are really big on not wanting to change anything. They're being extremely superstitious. They don't want to have certain guys back into the locker room. When there was a chance that Gregory was going to be cleared and being eligible to return back before his suspension was extended, Jerry Jones had came out and said he will not be coming back to the team. He will not be joining the team after the bye week. The deal with Tony Romo. I don't think they're going to try to change anything because I really think that it's been so long that they've been this good They're really focused on 100% playing the string out and just seeing where it goes. So, yeah, I don't think I think he's telling the truth.
Do you guys remember when you both said Tony Romo was going to be the starter when he came back?
It's the second time you brought that up.
Yeah.
Well, now it's just like more official, so I felt like everyone just needed to be reminded one more time.
So
No?
what I said at that time was I don't think that it was going to be the right decision, but I did think that they'd bring Romo back. I thought they should have stayed with Dak. I just didn't think it was going to happen.
And I believe I concurred with that sentiment.
I think
well.
it's a good time for you to back off.
All right, I'll back off. Do either of you guys think Dallas is going to lose on Thursday?
Yes.
No.
I do too.
I think they lose this week.
I don't.
Minnesota's defense looks very good again. I think it's a tough test for a rookie quarterback, although he's passed them all so far this season. And they're going to lose again. I don't think they're going 15-1 in this short week. I guess it's not a short week for them, but I just I can see it happening this week.
Minnesota's defense could look as good as they want. In the end, there's still Sam Bradford.
Yeah. That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
I still got
argue
him.
that.
I'm still taking Minnesota.
I'm going to take Minnesota. I'm going to take Minnesota as well. So that's about it for the news that I have, guys. Anything else that that I missed that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I did actually find one other thing, and I know we've stayed on this kind of long, but Derrick Henry will possibly have goal line work in his future. I think this is an interesting story because
for you,
a lot of teams out there were, definitely for me because I own him in that 16-team league. But a lot of fantasy owners have gotten to where they are today, riding the back of DeMarco Murray, who's got over 1,400 total yards and 11 touchdowns this season. The last 2 weeks, he's averaging only 3.3 yards per carry, and they think they want to reduce some of the shorter yardage runs for him so he doesn't take as much of a pounding, very much unsimilar to what they want to do in Dallas. So what I'm seeing is that look for Henry to steal 8 to 10 touches from Murray going forward, which would put Derrick Henry in flex consideration, especially in those deeper leagues. So this is very, very interesting because if Henry should come in and actually show something really dynamic, maybe those touches actually start to become more split. It would be odd for me with the way Murray has played, but we know what his injury history and the Titans do have a legitimate shot at the playoffs, and they might want to make sure he's there if they do get in. So
I mean, you can't
something
argue.
To keep no.
You can't argue that Henry looks fresher right now. I mean, just look at this past game. He had what, six carries and over 60 yards? Is that right?
I believe it was 8 for 60.
8 for 60. So I mean, meanwhile, Murray struggled to get to a terrible. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but to not a very good productive yards per carry. So, and that's 2 games in a row if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, look, I think it's a great idea to start working him in a little bit more and give him those touches. I don't see why you wouldn't, even if you're a team that doesn't make the playoffs and you're not necessarily worried about having Murray for extra games. You should start working the kid in. Let him run. Free Henry.
I can't disagree. The way that Tennessee has been playing, they've got to do something to try and stay competitive for the rest of the season and try and make a playoff push that I don't think many people saw coming this year. So I think they got to do what they can. I think it's a good idea.
All right, Sal, we are done with the news, which means it is that portion of the show where we all cringe by turning the show over to you.
Welcome, everybody, to Sal Time. So I decided we'd play a little game or a little trust or bust for the playoffs.
It even rhymes.
Stole that a little bit from Beta Pooh. He's going to be like, hey, you stole it from me, man. Yeah, but I'm on the show. All right? So, yeah, me.
Oh, he's going to be mad.
Buddy?
He's going to be mad.
I love Brandon. In a beat the hell out of your little brother kind of way. I love him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off some players who have had some fantasy success this season, and we're going to discuss their playoff schedules and where we see them going. And I'll ask you guys, you tell me what you think about them, and if there's somebody you feel you can trust going into the playoffs, or if there's somebody you feel will end up being a bust for the playoffs. So let's start with the quarterbacks, and the quarterback I have to bring up is one Colin Kaepernick. Over the last 4 weeks, He is the number 3 quarterback in FLAFFL scoring. He's scored 22.2, 23.9, 19.4, and this past week we all know 33.1 with the big 100-yard rushing game on top of the big passing game. He's done it through the air and on the ground. He's performed very well. And we'll discuss week 13 also, because a lot of people out there are fighting for a playoff position this week. So week 13 is every bit a part of the playoffs, even though it's not technically part of the playoffs, because you're in a must-win situation for a lot of people. So this week he's at Chicago. They are 15th against quarterbacks. Then he is home to the Jets, who are 14th against quarterbacks. He is at Atlanta in week 15, who are dead last, 32nd in defending fantasy quarterbacks. And in week 16, he takes on the LA Rams, who are 11th. Now, the Rams are really, really good at home, which is where he'll play them. In the 5 games at home this year, they've given up 2 quarterbacks, 11, 14, 7, 14, and 13. So, Steve, we'll start with you. Is Colin Kaepernick a guy where if you lost your starter earlier in the season or made a bad trade or just pick somebody who hasn't performed the way you would like them to have performed, are you comfortable riding Colin Kaepernick the next 4 weeks to a fantasy championship?
Well, as you guys know, I am dealing with a quarterback right now that is not very consistent and is someone who's not been, everything that I thought he'd been. So looking at someone like Colin Kaepernick, obviously I'm talking about Russell Wilson. I probably would never start Colin Kaepernick over Russell Wilson, but Sal just read how consistent and how good he's been playing over the last few weeks. You mentioned the defenses that he's going to be going up in the next few weeks. And as bad as the Jets have been over the last 5 weeks against quarterbacks, they actually ranked second and only give up 17.2 points a game, or only allow that many to quarterbacks. And they go against Chicago, like you mentioned, this coming week, and they rank 11th against quarterbacks. So although he has been producing very well, I still don't know if I would feel comfortable enough putting him in my lineup. If you were dealing with somebody, obviously you got to play the matchups and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Me personally, it's just something against the 49ers, I guess, or against Colin Kaepernick that I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him, even though he's got the rushing numbers, and you know that the 49ers are always going to be trailing for the most part, and so that garbage time is always an option for him. He's just not a guy that I feel comfortable putting in my lineup and starting him. I don't own him on any teams, and that might be a bad thing, but I can't do it. What about you, Kev?
I got to disagree with you, actually. I'm coming around. I'm starting to believe in Colin Kaepernick, and I'll tell you the reason why. Look at the fantasy points per game that he's putting up. He's 11th right now in fantasy points per game. By the way, your boy Russell Wilson sitting at 19th in that category. Obviously a smaller sample size for Colin Kaepernick, but that's a pretty significant difference from 11 to 19. He's got him by over 2.5 points per game. So, and then you look at the defenses that Kaepernick has played. It's not like, look, he's got a Tampa in there and he's got a New Orleans. Those are good good defenses to play, obviously. But Arizona, New England, Miami, 3 defenses that are, not the hardest defenses against the pass, but they're certainly not giving up tons of points to opposing quarterbacks. They're all in the bottom third of the league as far as opposing points to opposing quarterbacks. So, and if you look at the stats for him, but look at just the last 3 games, right? He has, we're talking about 6 passing touchdowns versus 1 interception in the last 3 games with a rushing touchdown thrown in. He's thrown for, the yardage totals for his passing totals aren't super high, but when you add in the, I think he's got doing math off the top of my head here, and it's not going very well, about 700 plus yards, through the air, but then you add in another almost 200 yards through the ground, so it makes up for it. He looks, it's not pretty. He's not, he doesn't throw the ball well. He still doesn't make great decisions, but this is an offense that is going to be playing from behind almost exclusively because their defense is so terrible. And they're going to be throwing and he's going to be running because their offensive line breaks down. So I trust it. I think, and I'm not scared too much. While I understand what you're saying about the Jets being improved and the Bears being better as well. They're not defenses that scare me a ton. And then you got Atlanta in Week 15, which is a sweet matchup. So I don't know. I mean, Steve, maybe you should consider trying to grab Kaepernick instead of Wilson.
Maybe you're absolutely right. Maybe I should.
Do you think that Russell Wilson likes Fidel Castro?
Oh God!
I'm not touching that.
Move on to the next one, please.
Right. So we'll move on to running backs, and the first running back I want to bring up is Robert Kelly. Robert Kelly, since taking over as the starter 4 games ago, has been a top 10 fantasy running back. He's had 3 solid games, and then he had a little bit of a dud on Thanksgiving, where he went 14 carries for 37 yards. He is going to be facing in Week 13. This guy has a brutal schedule. Week 13, he faces Arizona, who is 3rd against the run. Week 14, he is in Philadelphia, 8th against the run. Week 15, he is home to Carolina, who is 2nd against the run. And in the championship weekend, if you manage to make it there with this guy as your RB2, he faces Chicago. Now, I will say this about Chicago. Chicago is currently 6th against running backs, and at one point they were 1 or 2. So that means they've dropped a little bit. And if you go back and look at the last 3 weeks, they have given up a rushing touchdown in each one of the last 3 weeks, and they've given up over 100 yards rushing in each of the last 2 weeks. So we'll have to keep an eye on what if the Chicago keep going downward over the next couple of weeks, and does that become a good matchup. But overall, he's getting plenty of volume, plenty of touches. But do you see that amounting to big fantasy days, Kevin, with this tough running back schedule coming up?
No, I don't. I don't trust him going forward. The schedule is brutal, as you mentioned, and that's for me that's enough because look, this guy has been pretty good. He's certainly getting the volume, but at the end of the day, they're throwing the ball all the time. I mean, Kirk Cousins is completing passes at what, a 70% clip right now on the season. So you look at the last let's see, I'm looking at the last 4 games for 4 games for Kirk Cousins, right? Passing attempts, 56, 33, 30, and 53. They throw the ball a lot, which means, yes, he's going to get the lion's share of carries, and I understand he ran the ball a lot in those games as well. They do run a lot of plays, but I just don't trust that he's going to be, as effective against those defenses in games where you could see something like this last game against Dallas where he was only getting 14 touches. And he's also a non-factor in the passing game. So in PPR leagues, he knocks him down even further. And just in general, he doesn't have that ability to add statistics through the air. So I don't buy him. I would not trust him. I think that you probably lucked into him as an RB2. Hopefully you didn't trade big stock for him because overall I just don't see him performing over the next few weeks. So you probably, hopefully you have some other options.
I would say that I tend to agree. I think that his production probably is not going to be what it has been these last few weeks. But like you said, you probably lucked into him, or maybe you got him because you were dealing with some injuries. So I think that you could do a lot worse than Robert Kelly. Sal mentioned how bad or how dominant these running defenses are, and I don't think that the offenses on those side of the ball, except for Carolina's, I don't think the offenses are necessarily enough to be pulling away where the Washington team will have to abandon the run game. So I think that volume will still be a play for Robert Kelly. I know he's still getting touches because he is that main running back, although he did get his lowest touch or carry total since his earned that starting position in the last 4 weeks. But I think that these teams, I don't think that Washington's going to fall enough behind where they're going to have to abandon that like they did against Dallas. I think they're going to stay in it, and that always opens up the opportunity for him to bust off a big one to get into the end zone. And so I think that he still is going to be a serviceable RB2, probably not I mean, if you have other options, if you had a Jordan Howard, I much rather like his schedule. But Robert Kelly, I think, is someone that's going to get the volume and still has the potential to get into the end zone because he is assured to have that lead role for Washington going forward.
All right, very good. So I think we're all in agreement on Kelly somewhat. I don't think any of us are buying him as a real great option. Steve gave some reasons why you maybe would hang in there with him, but I'm more on Kevin's side with the Robert Kelly discussion. So the next running back I will move on to is the running back for my Oakland Raiders, Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray, since coming back from his injury in his 5 games, has also been a top 10 running back. And he's starting to face less competition. I don't know how many people are aware that DeAndre Washington was a healthy scratch last game. They did not dress him. So he is only now currently fighting Jalen Richard for touches, and he's really not. It's really a straight backup situation. He's not really facing him too much for those carries. In the 5 games since he's been back, he's had 20 touches, 16 touches, 21, 17, and 22. And his fantasy totals in those games in FLAFFL scoring, which is half-point PPR, 19.3, 9.6, 31.2, 11.7, and 16.3. He has a pretty nice schedule coming up. He faces Buffalo this week, who has been 17th against running backs. He is on the road in KC. They are 10th against running backs in fantasy. That's his toughest matchup. If you get to weeks 15 and 16, he is on the road in San Diego, 26th against running backs, and then home in the championship week against the Colts, who are 25th against running backs. Me as a Raider fan, I thought they were going to start to go away from him. I've actually been someone who hasn't been supporting him, but based on these numbers, I'm starting to change my mind. Steve, what is your opinion? Is Latavius Murray a solid RB2? You're ready to plug in every week rest of the way?
I do think that he's getting there. You like the situation that he's in on the Raiders, who are an offense that put up a ton of points. So the chances of them leading in a game and going to that run game lead to him getting a lot of potential opportunity every single week. The schedule coming up does scare me a little bit. Buffalo, you mentioned that they haven't been that great over the last 5 weeks. They do come in as the 3rd best defense against running backs. They've only allowed 251 yards total rushing in their last 4 games. So that might be something that, this weekend you might want to look to see if you might have some better options. But I do like that, like you mentioned, Washington not even playing last week. You've barely seen him on the field leading up to this week. So you knew something crazy was going on there. And his production, the only thing that worries me is that you mentioned the high 19 points, 9 points, 30 points, 11 points, 16 points. It's just so up and down. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency there, but it kind of comes with the territory when you're a guy that is kind of touchdown dependent as much as he seems to be. So I am going to be playing matchups with Latavius Murray. I'd probably lean more towards an RB2 with RB1 upside every week because of the offense that he is a part of and because that defense is, you can't trust the defense. So you're always going to be trying to hold on to the ball as long as possible. So I like Latavius Murray, but for these next couple weeks, I would definitely be I'd be playing matchups more so. But those last couple weeks, the matchups are fantastic for him once you're actually in the playoffs.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Steve. I honestly can't bring up too much else. I think you're going to trust him if you have him because chances are you used a decent draft pick on him. And, again, we've talked about it a lot. At this point in the season, there are guys, maybe you made some moves to get him or maybe something along those lines. I like the volume. I like the lack of any experience behind him. Sal, I'll ask you this, though. With the goal line stuff, Alawale, is that his name? Alawale? Do I say that correctly?
Yeah,
He seems to be used a little bit here. Is that something that you would be concerned with where Murray does tend to be a little touchdown dependent? That would be the ultimate, worst for you in the fantasy playoffs, right? You don't get much out of him because he loses out on, he gets vultured on a touchdown, and that's something that I would be concerned with. But like I said, ultimately, I think you're rolling him out there, and I think he's an RB2 the rest of the way, especially once you get past Buffalo.
So Alawale had one touch, and it was a reception last game. So he had a big reception the game before also. And to be honest with you, Murray has, I think, 5. He had a 3-touchdown game and a 2-touchdown game, and he was used a little bit more on the goal line. So that honestly doesn't worry me. They're using Alawale more as a receiver than a pounder. Perfect.
Well, then I say full steam ahead.
All right, we're going to move over to wide receivers, and it's appropriate that we're starting with Kevin because we got him to admit the other day that this guy is not just another guy any longer. And Jamison Crowder is a guy who, if you want steady production all season, it's been this guy. He opened up with a 6 for 58 and then rattled off two games with back-to-back touchdowns and then had a down week in week 4. And then since then, he's rattled off 11, 11.8, 14.3, 21.2, 12.4, 17.7, and 12.8. That's 9 double-digit games in 11 contests. That's pretty consistent and reliable for me. He is the 13th overall wide receiver for the entire season in FLAFFL scoring, which makes him a high-end wide receiver 2. In the playoffs, he's going to take on, week 13, he's going to take on Arizona, which is 11th against wide receivers. Then Philadelphia. Guys, remember when Philadelphia was an impressive defense? They're 24th against wide receivers in fantasy this year. Then they are home to Carolina, who is 22nd against fantasy wide receivers. And then on the road for the Week 16 championship matchup in Chicago, who are 27th against wide receivers. He faces 3 bottom of the 20 wide receiver defenses in the playoffs. Do you think this guy maybe even starts to sniff a little low-end wide receiver territory, Kevin?
Low-end wide receiver 1, is that what you're saying?
Did I not say that? Did I leave the 1 out?
I think you left the 1 out.
Yes.
Yep.
Very observant, Kevin. I wanted to make sure you were listening. You win.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll expect my prize in the mail. I think that, no, I don't think he's low-end wide receiver 1. I do think that he's more than just another guy. I think he's probably I'm going to call him a mid-range wide receiver 2, maybe low-end wide receiver 2. And the reason I say that is this. While I just mentioned that Kirk Cousins likes to sling the ball all over the place, the amount of times that they throw, I'm looking at the target numbers for his games, and it's sort of up and down. And that does worry me a little bit because he is a guy that you expect to get a lot of targets. Now, obviously, he's producing despite whatever these target numbers are. But there's also been touchdowns involved, right? So that's what makes me nervous. When you're talking about going back to week 8, 13 targets, he had 9 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown. Great game. The next game for them was week 10, 6 targets, 4 catches, 37 yards and a touchdown. That game's not so good if he doesn't score. And then, you're talking the game after that against Green Bay, 3 targets, 3 catches. Now it's 102 yards and a touchdown. So like I said, he's producing. You can't argue that. The target numbers concern me a little bit only because you want to see more volume there. We've talked about it a lot. You need to have some volume in order to produce. I don't know if he can consistently keep up this same production with the target volume being up and down as it was, but you can't argue with the fact that he's been pretty steady. And like you said, Sal, I mean, you're talking about what, double-digit points in the last 7 straight games. So in a couple of those, over 15 points. So I mean, I don't know. I'm still torn. Maybe I'm still biased because I thought he was just another guy for so long. But the defenses obviously don't scare you. So I think you're going to plug him in exactly where he's probably been in your lineup for the last 4 or 5 games, which is a wide receiver 2, maybe a flex, or a wide receiver 3 if in those leagues, and you're going to keep him there, and you're going to be happy with it, for the most part. Because if he doesn't produce, if he has a game where he has 3 targets and 2 catches for 25 yards and doesn't score, it's not going to kill you because you're not depending on him.
Yep, I don't have too much to add to that. I think he is settled in as a wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season based on what he's done for the last few weeks, like Kev said, double-digit points for the last 7 weeks. Plus, you saw last week on Thanksgiving, Jordan Reed banged up his shoulder, so if he's not playing going forward, that could lead to that bump in volume and give you a little bit of a higher floor in terms of the targets that he's seeing, so you don't have to worry so much about that, the volume playing a part into his production. So I like him as a wide receiver too going forward for the rest of the season as well, for sure.
All right, very good. So we're going to move on to a guy now who doesn't have a lot to base his season off of this year because he just came back from injury, and that is Sammy Watkins. So in Sammy Watkins' first game back this past week, he only saw 45.5% of the snaps, and he did catch three balls for 80 yards, and he got deep for one. Flashed the old Watkins that we came to know and appreciate last year. And I like him going forward personally, considering he's a guy I've always spoken poorly about. I think he has some good matchups. He's got one tough one in there, but some good matchups. To start off in week 13, I'm high on him this week. I might have him. It's crazy enough. I definitely gonna have him at least as a high end wide receiver too. But he's scratching the low end wide receiver one because we just saw Oakland get burned for an 88-yard touchdown from Ted Ginn, which is a la Watkins all day, and also a 44-yard touchdown to Kelvin Benjamin in that same game. So I think he gets loose this week. I think Buffalo's just going to go out there and let it fly. So I'm getting him in my lineup this week. But in the playoffs, if you were able to hold on to him, he does, believe it or not, Pittsburgh has been fourth in defending wide receivers in fantasy football this year. So for all the high-scoring games that they're in and us thinking that they're not that great of a defense, for some reason the numbers don't work out for wide receivers. So in Week 14, they are home. And by the way, they're home in Week 14, 15, and 16, Buffalo. So they're home to Pittsburgh, fourth against wide receivers, home to Cleveland, 27th to wide receivers, and then home to Miami, who are 16th in defending wide receivers. So, Steve, what do you think about Sammy Watkins, being that he's a guy we both haven't had a lot of nice things to say about? Are you trusting him as a wide receiver too the rest of the way?
I think it is funny because we really bashed him coming into the season based on his draft value, where he was going in drafts, and based on his injury concerns and all of that. But I'm right there with you now that he's come back, now that he's fully healthy, and now that he's got this schedule staring at him going forward into the playoffs. I like him a lot as a wide receiver too. It was never a question about the talent. It was more of a question about his health and more of a question about the offense. But with the way that the wide receivers have gone there, he is their obvious number one wide receiver. He's got the most talent. He's got the highest upside. And so I think something that Kevin talks about all the time is roster construction. He is definitely a boomer bust type of guy, but there are a few boomer bust type of guys that have the type of ceiling that he does, because he can just absolutely blow the top off of defenses, like you said. So I feel the same way. I'm getting him out there. You always have to worry about the low production games because Tyrod Taylor, we've talked about his passing yardage totals all season. Those things happen, but I feel like you can at least get him into a flex spot. I picked him up last week off of waivers in, I believe, like 3 or 4 leagues. And I'm stoked that I have him for this stretch, that I just even have him as an option, someone with that much talent and who is a clear-cut wide receiver one on their football team. So, yep, I agree. I'm rolling him out there. Kev, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely. If you've made it this far with having him on your roster, then you've probably done pretty well elsewhere as well. So to your boomer bust point, I think you could take the chance. Stick him in a flex. You'll probably be fine. I agree with you, Sal, though. I think for my rankings, going forward and this week, I think he's going to creep up there pretty quickly because he just has such a great talent, and they have to throw the ball to someone. And not that they throw the ball a ton. Obviously, the game, the Buffalo game runs through LaShawn McCoy. I think we've talked about that plenty of times. But at the same time, Robert Woods has been banged up pretty much all year. Brandon Tate's not very good. Marquise Goodwin has shown flashes here and there. Justin Hunter catches touchdowns occasionally, but for the most part, these guys are not that good at receiving the ball. So it's going to be great for Tyrod Taylor to have someone else in there The big plays are going to be there. He's going to be a steady receiver, and he looked good. As long as there's no setbacks, I think you're good to go with Sammy Watkins. So I agree with you guys on this one.
So let me bring this up to you. This was a question asked directly to me on Fantasy Life app today from DCTX Track. And he said, well, first he said, Sal 33, what's up, brother? With an A. So what's up to you, sir? And he said to me, so Watkins, Cooks, or A-Rob in a 0.5 PPR, pick 2 rest of season. I will be dropping 1. I was like, wow.
Oh,
He's either got a very impressive roster or small rosters, or he just wants to make room for somebody else. I didn't get a chance to ask all those other questions. I will tell you in advance that my response was to drop Allen Robinson and hold on to Watkins and Cooks. But let me get your guys' opinion. What do you think?
I agree, no question. It's not even close for me. Allen Robinson has been so, touchdown dependent this year to begin with, and just awful in the games where he doesn't score, that it's not even a question in my mind. Particularly when we know what just happened with Cooks, but as we also mentioned, we think that might help him get a few more looks over the course of the next few games. And by the way, in the playoffs, as we've also mentioned several times, he plays Tampa Bay twice. And, after just talking about Sammy Watkins looking good, being the only talented receiver in, the Buffalo passing game, I think you have to keep those 2.
I look at who's throwing the ball to each one of them, and one of them's got Drew Brees throwing the ball, one of them's got Blake Bortles. So that would make my choice for me there. Tough choice to make between those 3 studs, but yeah, A-Rob would be the one to go for me.
Yeah, maybe at another time I'll reach back out to him and ask him, just give us a shot of what the whole roster looks like, because
it's got to be good.
He's got to be pretty deep at wide receiver to be making those choices. So, all right, let's move on. I have 2 tight ends I'll bring up here, and then we'll wrap this up. The first tight end I'll bring up is Vance MacDonald. Vance MacDonald, over the last 4 weeks, has been a top 10 tight end, believe it or not. They need to throw the ball to somebody. There's no wide receiver really stepping up on a weekly basis. It's generally someone different, and a lot of times spread out amongst all of them. Going forward into the playoffs, in Week 13, he's at Chicago, 13th against tight ends. Home to the Jets, who have gotten a little bit better. They're at 16th now, but they were not as good earlier in the season defending tight ends. At Atlanta, who is 28th, been bad against tight ends all season. And then in Week 16, home to at LA, who are 7th in defending tight ends. So I'm not saying do you grab him as your surefire plug-in guy every week, but if you have another guy where maybe you want to play matchups, Kev, are you grabbing McDonald and looking at some of those matchups and hoping to get him in there and find success, maybe steal some extra points in the playoffs?
I mean, this tight ends are so tough because there's so many crappy ones out there that you can rotate through. So I think he's probably, just in that group that you can kind of pick and play your spots. So he's a guy, yeah. I mean, if I stream tight ends, I'm looking at a couple of those matchups that you list off, and I think, some of them are pretty good. Week 15 against Atlanta, certainly is enticing. We talked about Colin Kaepernick and how I think that he's can be trusted going forward. Obviously, he's throwing the ball to someone, and as you mentioned, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's been Vance MacDonald. In a decent amount. He's got over 6 targets in the last 5 games straight. So there's definitely worse you could do at tight end, I guess is sadly the way I look at this. So I think that you can probably, if you're streaming tight ends, if you're looking to grab guys here and there that you can plug and play, I think he's definitely one of the ones on the list. Overall, I would still prefer to have some of the steadier guys, the Olsons, the Reeds, the Jimmy Grahams, Delanie Walker. Obviously.
Wait, you'd rather have those guys over Vance MacDonald?
I'm just saying. I mean, you probably, but I could list. My point was going to be, I could probably list about 10 to 12 of them. So depending on your league size and what guys are doing with tight ends in your league, I mean, he's just one of those guys that you're going to rotate through. He's not a guy that I'm starting every week, and he's certainly not a guy that I have to have.
Yep, I would agree. I would say he would be a bust for me. 3 of those teams of the next 4 that he'll be facing during the fantasy season are actually in the last 5 weeks ranked in the top 10 against tight ends. That's Los Angeles, the Atlanta Falcons, and the New York Jets, who are actually second against tight ends in the last 5 weeks. So as opposed to Colin Kaepernick, what you guys were saying were what made him so enticing was the rushing numbers. That doesn't help Vance MacDonald as much. So for me, I'm not believing in the Vance MacDonald hype. I think I would much rather have a guy like CJ Fedorowicz, who's going to be more of a volume play as opposed to, doesn't have as much of a chance to get a touchdown, but it gets more targets, I think. So that would be someone I'd be looking for over Vance MacDonald. Not much of a believer in basically anyone on the 49ers, I guess.
But you're a believer in the people over in Houston?
Just one guy. I guess just Fedorowicz.
Ass Washer is killing independent Fedorowicz.
That's
So listen, it's interesting that you guys actually went into something that pertains to my next tight end. And my next tight end is Delanie Walker. So Delanie Walker in FLAFFL scoring for the season is the number 2 overall total point scoring tight end. But he has an interesting schedule coming up, and he's off this week. When guys are fighting for playoff positions, like Steve brought up earlier, in week 13, he's off. In week 14, he faces Denver, 10th against tight ends. Week 15, at Kansas City, 3rd against tight ends. And week 16, Kevin's favorite tight end defense, the Jacksonville Jaguars, are 9th in defending tight ends. So I'll ask you, are you worried about those matchups? And I'll ask you specifically, if you're not interested in playing Vance MacDonald every week, would you consider in week 15 playing Vance MacDonald at Atlanta, 28th against tight ends, and benching Delanie Walker at Kansas City, 3rd against tight ends? Kevin, we'll go to you first.
It's an interesting question, and I think the answer to it was probably no. I don't know that I could trust that, even with the matchup. Kansas City is obviously very good against tight ends, as you mentioned. I think I have him at 4th overall, giving up 5.2 points per game in the list that I'm looking at. So we're right in the same ballpark, and that's not a lot of points. But I still couldn't do it. I mean, I don't see how I could justify that. I don't know. I think Delanie Walker just has too much talent compared to Vance MacDonald, at least from consistency standpoint, that I would trust having Delanie Walker. Look, I'd rather start Delanie Walker and have him get the 5.2 that the Kansas City's giving up per game than start Vance MacDonald, even though he's going against Atlanta, who's giving up 9.6 fantasy points per game to tight ends, because I still think the chance exists for Vance MacDonald to throw the goose egg at you. I don't know that Delanie Walker throws a goose egg in any matchup against any defense.
Yeah, I can't bench Delanie Walker for anybody, basically. Like he's one of those guys. You put him in your lineup and you throw him out there, and you understand that the 0 can happen, but he just relied upon pretty heavily in that Tennessee passing game. And with the guys like that, it's like OBJ. Sure, Vance MacDonald could come out that week and score more points than Delanie Walker. It can happen, but you think that talent will overcome, and you throw those guys in there that have the most talent, the most opportunity, and the most likelihood to have a good game.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you guys. If I'm staring at my roster, it's not even a consideration. It's week 15. I'm playing for a chance to go to the fantasy championship. You play your studs. It's the old saying, and it doesn't change, especially when the most important part of your season is here. So that's it, guys. We're going to move on now from here. I think what we should do next Wednesday's show, Steve, which might be interesting, is to revisit our mid-season draft that we had and see how those guys finished out. So I think that's what I'm recommending.
Wow,
all right.
It's nice of you to discuss that with us before you did that.
Yeah, no.
This is an on-air pre-production meeting.
For all the fans at home, I want to let you know that I'm running.
Apparently, and but for now, we will let Steve run with final thoughts.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and listening to the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. Like us on Twitter, @Falafel House. Go like our page on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. Look for falafelhouse.com. And just you can get all kinds of daily fantasy goodness. And Sal mentioned it last time, something that I'm very excited about, something I cannot wait to do a few podcasts about, and that is the Falafel Playoff Challenge. If you do not know what that is, download the Fantasy Life app and to pop into the Falafel House chat and ask us, and we will be sure to tell you. So very excited for that coming up. Hope I just stole what Sal was going to talk about. Sal.
Hold on, let me write this down. Work on playoff challenge. Stop forgetting. Okay.
Yes, there we go.
No, just a reminder to everyone who's listening. If you're listening, you probably come and hang out in the chat anyway, but absolutely get in there. It's been a fun season. This has been 12 weeks already. Week 13 for a ton of people. If it's not just to get a spot, maybe it has a buy on the line. Get in there, ask your questions. We are there round the clock, especially Sunday morning for those last-minute questions, injuries, and stuff of that nature. Come join us. It's a lot of fun. We look forward to it. Kev?
Yeah, I completely agree. You took exactly what I was going to say. Remind everyone to download the Fantasy Life app and do that. So I will move along to remind everyone that we like reviews, love reviews. Steve actually cries when he gets a review. So it's really nice. It's very sweet. He actually cries. But so if you could go to iTunes and leave us a review, we would appreciate it. Anywhere else you get your podcast as well, that would be great. And let's see, we will be back on Thursday night for us, which will be Friday for you, to discuss the upcoming weekend games. And until then, Steve, hit the button.